Hello and welcome to Author's Feet, a literary program focusing on contemporary authors and their journey to their authorship. I am your host, Empress Ciku Mwaniki. I'm excited by our today's guests. He's a man who wears many caps. He's a thespian, he's a playwright, he's an actor, he's a teacher, he's an international moderator, and so many more. Karibu sana, John Sibi Okumu.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm very well, Empress.
Karibu sana to our program, and thank you for coming. Where to start? First, what are you reading right now?
At the moment, I'm reading what I'm editing, Empress. So it's a bit of a secret until the book is actually published.
I didn't say in the intro that you're also an editor. How is that going?
How does it go? I edit mostly for friends on request, and then I decide, am I going with this or not? One famous person who asked me to be a mentor figure in his writing is Kenyanjui Kombani, the banker who writes.
Yes.
So, yes.
You've done very well with mentoring him. But you charge for that, right? You charge for editing.
The
When you
business
say friends, we don't want to confuse that.
No, the business, yeah, sometimes it's for free. Because at the end of the day, Empress, is you've got to read the book. And if you read the book and you make comments, if you do it for friends, then somebody will give you a token and an honorarium. The minute you start having editors' fees and you're charging per page, and everything becomes slightly more complicated.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying I don't edit, please don't send me your manuscript to edit it, because I haven't got a rate card as such.
Okay. Okay, there's you're an actor, you're a playwright, you're a broadcaster. There's so many things. You have a long list of things that you do. Could you tell us which one came before the other, and did any of them influence?
A question I've answered before, and I'll give the same answer. The linkage for what one does is the word, or maybe words, plural. So, for whatever reason, maybe school, I had teachers who were a great influence, and I fell in love with words. And crucial to that mix was that when I was a very little boy, I joined with my mummy, my father, who was in England, studying to become a lawyer, which he did eventually. But what it did is that it wrenched me from the sort of village, mashambani, sort of eating termites and running around barefoot with my catapult and birds.
Budalangi.
Exactly. We mustn't be tribal, but if you insist. So I think it's crucial, because as a 7-year-old, you can imagine sort of yanking one of your children from here to Shanghai, China, and they suddenly get immersed in Chinese culture. At that age, you're still very, very influenceable. So starting school as a 7-year-old in the UK is crucial to the sort of branding of self, because it gave me a very intimate acquaintance with the English language. It became, I might as be black as you can see me on camera, but English became the language in which I thought and manipulated nuanced thinking. So when Dad got his degree and we came back, what happened then, it's a very long story, it can take the whole interview, but I'll try to condense it. When we came back, I was at a school, and on speech day, as we were busy receiving prizes, I was asked to recite a poem on speech day. So I got up and I narrated Wordsworth's The Daffodils. I wandered lonely as a cloud, and the guest at the speech day were two people who had been seconded by the BBC to teach broadcasters in post-independence Kenya. So what were the names? Roma Barraclough, Robert Beaumont, Peter King, and they said, oh, that brown-eyed boy speaks really good English. Let him join the Kenya School's broadcasting division of the Voice of Kenya.
That time?
I was probably about 11 or 12.
Oh.
So at the age of about 11 or 12, I infiltrated the Kenya Schools Broadcasting Division of the Voice of Kenya as child talent. So I'd read, Great Expectations. And already I was being coached and mentored by, quote unquote, the best that the white man could send to the black man. And then I went to school, and at the school that I went to, again, let's not give it false publicity, but there was a great tradition of drama in the school. So there were reading competitions. So the things that were really good, because I had this base, you can imagine that if there were reading prizes, I continued to win them. And if we had a drama competition and there was a lot of sort of colonial spillover and I was a Cockney manservant, I would get Best Actor.
Yes.
So as a parent, you would know that if you're kind of affirmed in any way, then you think, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
So I wasn't there, making copper sulfate crystals and wishing to be a doctor. The thing that I would shine in was debate. So the track record is there, shining. I finished that as an undergrad. I'm already working for VOK. As an undergraduate, I become a newsreader. As an actor, James Falkland of the Phoenix Players comes to judge our competition. So I leave school, I go to the National Theatre. I'm Romeo in a production of Romeo and Juliet in 1973. Juliet is white, I am black, co-production. Tongues wag, what is this kind of pairing?
Which year was that?
1973.
Oh, that must have been scandalous.
Yeah. Well, kind of. And then fast forward, I'm lucky in the sense that I've always been discovered.
Yeah.
I have no formal training in the things that have made my brand. So somebody saw me and said, oh, this guy could read the news. Next minute, I was reading news for the General Service of the Voice of Kenya. I was doing television news. So I was in this anchor. Then somebody said, oh gosh, this guy can act. Why can't he write? So I think it was a combination of people. My mentor, the author Marjorie Oludhe Magoe, said, John, why don't you write something? You've got all the attributes. You've acted. You've been in about 40 plays. If anybody can write a play, you ought to be able to write one.
So you didn't make that decision. You didn't consciously.
No. I didn't sort of wake up and say, I had ambitions as a child to become a writer.
Yeah.
But I discovered to my horror that I couldn't make a living out of it. So
which one was the first, which one did you write, the first one?
Oh, that we're fast forwarding now to 2004. In my anthology, The Collected Plays, there are 6 of them in there.
Yes.
The very first one was in 2004. And then my idea was to write one every 2 years.
Yeah.
And write as many so that I could eventually write as many as William Shakespeare, my hero. So far we're at 6 and I'm working on 7.
You're working on 7 right now. So it's been 2 years then, yeah? From 2004 you've actually...
No, it wasn't, because now when the collection takes us up to 2014. And then I haven't written anything since.
Why is that? Why do you think?
Oh, good question. Because of the kind of, if you write anything for the stage in particular, you should be writing to be performed. So again, we can't, in this interview, go back into the whole sort of breakdown of the theatrical climate. But I spoke of the Phoenix Players. The Phoenix Players shut down. So the auctioneers came, took everything to some sort of dump, threw them there. And and I know that if you want to do a play at the National Theatre, the fees to hire the theatre are extremely prohibitive. And the idea of people paying 2,000 shillings to buy a ticket rather than buying 5 beers is also very daunting. So if I write a play and I don't know where it's going to be performed, it sort of makes you a bit of a downer, because you don't see an end product.
I've watched, I've been to, I guess, about 90% of your plays, and amazing ones as well. And I've seen packed theatres.
Yes, but we're going into the mechanics of producing. I am a playwright. Now, on your show, the great genres, I'm sure you've talked to poets, you've talked to fiction writers, novelists, and I guess you haven't talked to that many playwrights. So,
Actually, you're my first.
so thank you for
Yeah.
this dying breed. It's a weirdo because if we are billing ourselves as an oral society, sisi Afrika tunapenda kuongea, this is the way we express ourselves. It's really weird, I ask myself, that we don't give more kudos to the spoken word, which the theatre is. So poets and playwrights are the poor cousins of the literary family. Nobody really considers you a writer if you're a playwright. But if you look at the list of people who've won the Nobel Prize, quite a couple of playwrights have won. So hiyo ndio dini yangu, so nataka wafuasi na wawe wengi.
Watakuwa wengi. First, you contributed in the collection Nairobi Noir.
Yes.
That was something new for you.
Again, the story of my life. When I'm just a lucky person, blessed maybe in sort of spiritual terms. People always ask me to do things which I hadn't bothered to think I would do. So we established a friendship with the author Peter Kimani.
Yeah.
And Peter Kimani had written his New York Times bestseller listed Dance of the Jacaranda.
Jacaranda, yeah, an amazing book.
So he wrote me an email. I've got the email on my computer saying, I've seen you as a broadcaster. I quite like the sound of your voice. And everybody's offering me readers who've got an American accent. So he's saying if the book says, you know, the railway line moved from Mombasa heading to Kisumu, he said, you know, we're in colonial Kenya. You know, Morgan Freeman is not going to read Dance of the Jacaranda because it's not credible. So I want you to read it. So we met and I read Dance of the Jacaranda, closed chapter. It's online. You can see the reading. It exists as an Amazon book. Peter Kimani is called upon to edit Nairobi Noir, sort of mystery stories occurring in capital cities or big cities across the world. So there's Amsterdam Noir, Paris Noir, and when they get to Darkest Africa, I think it sort of starts off with Lagos Noir. It's always Nigerians and South Africans always come before us. But way down the line, we have Nairobi Noir. And he has to supply any number of contributions to Nairobi Noir. So he said, because we'd had this collaboration, he said, you have the gift of the gab, John, why don't you write a short story? And I said to him, Prof, PK, I haven't written a short story since I left high school. But I wrote a short story, and that short story ended up being shortlisted for the honors list of the best mystery stories in the United States of America in 2021. So I sort of thought, gosh, I wish my mummy was here to see this and she'd be proud. But, so I can't, I'm lucky that way. I think if I had a sort of biography to write, I would just say there has to be a sort of openness of heart, something that people attach to, a genuineness, a sincerity, and they say, let's go with this guy.
Yeah.
And I'm also very keen to pick up on opportunity, because that's, you know, if part of the thing talking to young people on a series such as this is that if something looks like it's opening a door, walk through it.
Walk through it.
You never know what can happen.
Okay. Playwright, Nairobi Noir. I would like to know if you think, because that was such a success, do you think it's something you can, you can focus on?
No, let me answer that. Because the thing is, I think they're writers like, say, Shoinka, the great Wole Shoinka, who do everything. And Shoinka, the playwright, Trials of Brother Jero, Shoinka, the novelist, complicated titles, season of, I don't even know what the title means, anemone or enemy, you know what I'm saying? I shall set forth at dawn, there he is. What else? He writes poetry, telephone conversation. Everybody at school had this idea of racism in the UK. I think that one shouldn't spread oneself thin. He's a genius, which I'm not. So I would much rather stick to what I have a most definite grounding in. You see, the minute you start to do everything else, then as an artist, you try to compete with other people who are doing the same thing. So if I suddenly decided I want to bill myself as the next Ngugi wa Thiong'o and write another grain of wheat, I'm entering into a realm which novel writing has its own kind of rules and regulations.
But you're good, so why not?
Well, because I want to write plays.
It's been proven that you're good.
Yeah, that's sort of like ego tripping. If you really want to be
Which is
good,
okay.
Yeah, which is okay. But I think I have in my head, I have 3 more plays sort of going in my head.
Come out.
Yeah. So why not give birth to those babies first?
The poetry.
Poetry now goes back to school days. Again, I had brilliant, inspired and inspiring teachers. So we were, post-independence-ish, you're going into a sort of British curriculum school and you're doing, there's no such thing as the list, the orange list, you've got to read this. So we were doing 1 Shakespeare, Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, Form 4, Form 6. So every year there was a Shakespeare. And we had wonderful teachers, were sort of Oxbridge alumni, teaching us all this stuff. And I was fascinated by Mr. Who and Mr. Whom and Ms. So-and-so. So I thought, why not? Also in my day, we did Latin. So this is a dead language, and you're sort of into amo, amas, amata, mamus, amatis, amant.
Can you speak Latin?
Well, you can't speak it because it's dead, but you can work it out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Your hieroglyphics, your ancient Greek, Hebrew. You're reading the Bible.
Yeah.
What it does is to make you appreciate the component parts of a language. How if I were to speak Gikuyu. I want to get beyond that. Anybody can do that.
Yeah.
Now, can I actually write in Kikuyu? Perhaps not.
No.
So again, the idea of specialization is a recurring theme in our conversation. I started writing poetry as a youngster in imitation of other people. So the earliest things that I had. And then again, you had Marjorie Oludhe-Magoe, who wrote Coming to Birth. And she was my mentor. So as an undergraduate, I walked into a bookshop, S.J. Moore, and asked this Mzungu lady, sort of crouched lady, can I buy a book in here? And we struck up a conversation, and I always came and bought books from her. And she used to have a poetry reading kind of salon at the top of S.J. Moore. And people like Feroz Navroji, the lawyer, who also writes, went in, and every single Thursday or something, we'd go up into the attic as lovers of poetry and read our poetry. So you see the sort of, the stars being aligned.
Yeah.
So again, as a very young undergraduate, it was my evening. Some guy, so some guy came in all the way from Nigeria, and he was carrying this little baby. He came to do some things. So things like that sort of exist to this day. But there I was presenting my poetry. And remember that when I was presenting my poetry, the person who I was presenting it to is the woman who wrote Song of Nyarloka, that the poem that they always read about postpartum. I mean, Marjorie was the bee's knees. So I'm being affirmed by the best there is.
The creme de la creme.
Exactly. So that's why you find when you say the Nguka, on the payback situation, I'm always trying to pass on my love of literature to little people.
Yeah.
I've got the most amount of time talking to kids, just in case one of them ends up being
I'm a witness to that commitment of yours.
Yeah. So I write poetry.
Okay.
I don't think I write good poetry, if we'd had, but because the people I admire, again, I'm not sort of trying to create.
That's you judging yourself, right?
On the strength of poets whom I admire. Again, because for me, the idea of a read of the 3 genres, I'm not just saying I would like to read a poem a day before I go to bed. That's the thing. And just for the language, I think one can read the Bible, the King James Version, just for the language, forget the belief. One can read the Quran just for the language. And these things sort of like calm you down. It's a form of therapy.
Yeah,
but then you read lots of poets. And then you say, oh my gosh, hii ambayo nimeandika sasa ni mbaya, mi sielewi.
Tell me about your teaching. How did you end up being a teacher? How is it that we call you teacher, mwalimu?
Mwalimu. Again, gosh, you're spurring me to write an autobiography or something.
Yeah, you should, I think.
Quite by chance. When I'd graduated, the first kind of job that I envisaged, because it had lots of money in it, was advertising. So I went into an advertising agency. Again, we don't have to name names. And that was my first job. But I sort of felt that in my bone, I wanted to sort of like give back. I wanted to share what I had. And there are certain professions where, you know, the number one master plan is to make chums. Pesa mingi. Yeah. So, and the index of success is that you make lots of money. And you sort of work out that's not me.
Yeah.
But so again, I was going through a bad patch in my job, and I met a former teacher whom I'd met in Machakos when I was doing Romeo and Juliet. He'd come back to be headmaster of a school here in Nairobi. And I said, oh, I'm fed up, you know, I'm sort of, you know, teetering towards alcoholism. Yeah, treating to alcoholism, drinking far too much, really dégringoling, going down. And he said, oh, John, this is not the you I knew. Let me offer you a job.
Yeah.
So he's offering me a job teaching French in a school. Again, I think no names. Just believe that I'm basically telling the truth.
I know the schools, but
he's offering me a job.
Yeah.
But then again, I haven't done a BEd at Kenyatta University.
Yeah.
I haven't. I've done a BA majoring in French. So, je peux parler français, je peux vous sortir quelques mots en français. Mais, I cannot, I don't have but, you know, God is good, somebody's good there somewhere, who I'm offered a job in a private school. And within so many years of being there, the self-same guy makes me head of the Department of Modern Languages, which went down badly with the sort of private parents.
Yeah.
So Africa kutoka, you know, Port Victoria, atasomeshaje watoto wetu. But that was it. It's just
it was
fake.
in the end, right?
Yeah. So yeah, but in the end, you see, the thing is, in today's world, I'd never get a job teaching everywhere without a teaching degree.
Did you? So you did not try and become a teacher in Teachers Service Commission?
No, because I was offered a job in a private school, which for one thing paid more. It wasn't permanent and pensionable. I don't sort of get, you know, 3,000 bob a month 20 years later. But it did two things for me. It gave me a good salary, and it meant that when I had children, my kids could go to the school for free. So if I stayed there long enough, my kids could be having the same education as, you know, William Samoei Ruto's and Uhuru Kenyatta's kids. Not bad. I'll go for that. Well, I'm not paying anything.
At all.
Yeah. Dad's a teacher.
It's a good gig.
So, so consequently, it's their lives, and I don't particularly wish to go there, but I think my kids had a good education.
They had a good education. It is difficult to think about John Sibi Okumu and not think about that deep voice. I'm trying. There was I'm trying to avoid using here.
Nice voice, whatever it is. But again, I'm going to tell you a story. Storytelling is the essence of what we do, and I'm just telling you, I've been a very lucky guy.
Yes.
Let's go back to that primary school. When we'd come back from the UK, I've recited the poem, and my headmistress, whom I will name because I mean it sort of brings tears to my eyes, kind of thing. A lady called June Parker. She was a single woman, and she arranged after all this, because I was doing well, you know, shining, you know, total, you know, prodigious talent kind of thing. And June Parker arranged for me to go and have elocution lessons in what is today the Kenya Conservatoire of Music, opposite the National Theatre, opposite the Norfolk. So in those far-flung days, they were teaching people ballet, Vera Zerkovitz, wanafundisha.
Like
yes. So now I was signed up for, because people say there's another forum when people say, how comes you end up doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
And when I give talks, speeches at speech days and whatever, it's because you've got to work at a skill.
Yeah.
Just being talented is a waste of
Not
time.
enough.
So I'm very fussy, but the fussiness was brought in at the elocution lessons, because I remember the BBC types telling me what to do.
Yeah.
For elocution, we had to sit in solemn silence in a dull, dark dock, in a pestilential prison with a lifelong lock, awaiting the sensation of a short, sharp shock from the cheap and chippy chopper on a big black block. Now,
fail.
with not with feeling, but with speed.
Yeah.
To sit in solemn silence on a dull dark dock, and then the movement of the lips that the actors go through. I didn't go to acting schools,
Yeah.
but voice, R, A, E,
Posture?
or posture, all these things you're learning because you're on stage.
Yeah.
But it's not get a suit with a tie here and a bit of bling, and you've got a deep bass voice, and then you look pretty. All of those are a given. You've got to work at your craft. And I think that the youngsters that we have nowadays, once they've got those attributes, they think it's enough. I don't think so.
Does that make you cringe when you see some of these things?
Well, nothing makes me cringe. I'm just saying you can set the bar higher for yourself.
It's for yourself, not for...
Yeah, I think, the thing is, I walked barefoot to school and I never had opportunity. Therefore, this is why I'm massacring the English language. It's not an excuse. You'd never, ever allow me to do that if I presume to try and learn your language.
That is true.
Omanyere. No chakolo malumlula lwange, manyere odo malumlunyala. So it's not the twang, that kind of accusation of, this guy with a twang. I can speak my mother tongue very well, thank you. Enough to run an election campaign and give my current members of parliament a run for their money on their rhetorical board. So it's not, now by the same token, let's be honest about this, I marry a woman who is not from quote unquote my people. She's from Meru, Chogoria, and she's been wherever it is. So we speak to our kids entirely again in English. So our children, much to my chagrin, don't have the same competence that I have, but they have different opportunity and they're different people. But of my generation, born in the early 50s, I can cope.
Let's talk about accolades. I know you received the OGW.
That was nice, but that was
nice.
Shall I tell you what was really nice about that? Is that I was thinking, how comes this didn't happen before? But again, that there was a campaign led by people like Boniface Mwangi, Dana Seda, online campaign, basically saying every week, how comes we're giving awards to Githeri Man? And there were several people. They said, why is Wangeshi Muto, the sculpt, the painter? Why isn't Magdalene Odundo, the potter, dame? How comes these Kenyans haven't been? And they said, we want these people to have otherwise the whole thing doesn't make any sense. So, if I'm OGW in December 2022, my great crony and mentee, Catherine Kasavuli, the late, dear departed, she'd been made OGW 15 years before me. But when she started her broadcasting career, I'd been in the business for about 15 years before she started.
Yes.
So what is one to do? Again, accolades mean nothing. If we go back to my acting career, I was before a TV camera chronologically. In 1974, I was in a TV series of Born Free. Then we did We Are the Children. But the film industry, hasn't sort of say, wear a funny suit and come to the Kalashas. So the minute you make that your inspiration, you've got to go back to the people. You know what I'm saying? The people who respond to your work are the people who watch your plays, see you presenting the news, and the younger they were or are, the better it makes me feel. So I'd much rather have, you know, they say 70 years and 10. I've probably got one left. In that 1 year, I want to make an effort on young people. I have lifetime achievement awards. I think there are 5 of them. So the first one I got, I was like 35. And I said, well, I'm not dead yet. Why are you giving me a lifetime achievement award? Mbalamwezi. In the bad old days, they had Mbalamwezi. I've had Best Director in the time of awards, Sana Awards, Best Playwright for a play that I'd written. But let's go back, Empress. Those things mean nothing. Now, this is
nice.
It's. I think a lot of this stuff is good for the people who take a great delight. Are one's friends, are one's children, are one's family. But I'm just saying, because we're talking to artists on an artist platform. Don't make the acquisition of awards the spur. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to write something, go and buy a notepad, buy a pen, and write, and decide what is it that I'm going to write. If it's a love story, so okay, who's going to fall in love with whom? Jerry is going to fall in love with Abdullah. How do they meet? You know, and start. And 350 pages later, look at it, then revise it again, then give it to somebody whom you respect to comment, then revise it again, then present it to a publisher. And sadly, in Kenya, you might not find one.
The chances are you'll be rejected.
So you might as well have the budget as well to self-publish, which is the way of the future.